Do you know what's fascinating about the Vulcan Centaur? This rocket, which shows off like a beast with up to 6 solid rocket boosters, has not only completed its third mission in recent months, but also secured new National Security Space Launch, or NSSL, contracts. And that's at prices that could easily undercut SpaceX. While ULA is priced at $214 million per flight, SpaceX stays at $143 million. And that's despite the pressure from Blue Origin's BE-4 engines, of which the 30th unit has already been delivered. Let's dive into the updates from past flights, the SRB accident, all the way to Dream Chaser and Project Kuiper. A rocket update that shows how tough the competition is in the space industry. My name is Siren, and this is Mars Chronicles. Let's take off. Let's start with the previous flights of the Vulcan Centaur, which has performed impressively since its debut in January 2024, even though not everything went 100% smoothly. The first flight, CERT-1, carried the Peregrine lander from Astrobotic and a Celestis memorial payload, a milestone that initiated certification for NSSL missions. The Centaur upper stage demonstrated its restart capability, sending payloads to different orbits. Despite the failure of Peregrine on the way to the Moon, which had nothing to do with the rocket, it was a complete success. In October 2024, CERT-2 followed with a mass simulator carrying experiments for future Centaur technologies. This was the snag. About 37 seconds after launch, the nozzle of an SRB fell off, which led to asymmetric thrust. The rocket tilted slightly. Main engines compensated by extending the burn by 20 seconds, and it still reached orbit nominally. The Space Force praised the robustness of the system, and the investigation concluded that it was a manufacturing effect. ULA fixed that, and the third flight in August 2025 with USSF 106, including NTS-3 for upcoming GPS generations, was a complete success. The first NSSL flight and the debut of the VC-4S configuration with 4 SRBs. The Vulcan can lift off with either 2, 4, or 6 solid rocket boosters. Speaking of engines, Tori Bruno recently posted on X that Blue Origin has delivered its 30th BE-4 engine, a milestone for their partnership. Considering that the first 6 BE-4S were used for the 3 previous missions, Vulcan uses 2 per flight, that means ULA has enough in stock for another 12 missions. That's clever, because the BE-4 is LNG-based, efficient, and reusable by design, even though the Vulcan is an expendable rocket. It shows how ULA is catching up, but also the pressure they're under. Blue Origin is struggling with New Glenn, and ULA has to deliver to stay competitive with SpaceX. On the topic of reusability, ULA is planning what's called smart reuse. So they only want to jettison, recover, and reuse the most expensive section of the rocket, meaning the engines, after the mission. To me, that doesn't sound smart, but rather like more effort and unnecessary complexity, because that exact part of the rocket is designed to never fall off under any circumstances. But then it gets separated and falls back to Earth with parachutes. And there's absolutely no sign that they're reusing it. I'm going out on a limb here and saying that ULA will conduct the first attempts at so-called smart reuse in 2027 at the earliest. Then they'll realize that it's complete nonsense and give up on it. Hopefully, I'm completely wrong and they surprise us with fresh agility and unusual efficiency. And that's exactly where the NSSL contracts come into play. The latest awards from October 2025 highlight how expensive ULA is in comparison. The Space Force assigned 5 missions to SpaceX for $714 million, which is about $143 million per flight, while ULA gets 2 for $448 million. A hefty $214 million per mission. That's 50% more than SpaceX, and an increase compared to ULA's previous prices of $119 million in 2023. They introduced the Vulcan Centaur, among other things, to become more competitive. Why? Vulcan is an expendable rocket, while SpaceX reuses their boosters. The Phase 3 contracts take upgrades into account, but it shows the cost pressure. SpaceX flies 4 of them with the Falcon Heavy, which is perfect for heavier payloads like WGS-12 or secret missions. ULA gets the USSF-88 with GPS-3F4 and NROL-88. Solid, but less so. Blue Origin is not yet certified to participate in these bids, but they have the potential to push ULA completely out of business. But that wouldn't be in their interest since they would otherwise lose their only customer for the BE-4 engines. Overall, SpaceX holds the majority in Phase 3, ULA is second, and that could change the space industry landscape, where cost efficiency is very important. Let's look into the future of the Vulcan Centaur, because it has some very exciting missions ahead. In 2025, GPS-3 SV09 is scheduled for November. We will stream this launch, so keep an eye out for it. USSF-87 with GSAP satellites in Q4 and the first Kuiper batch with 45 satellites on VC6L. So the debut of the configuration with 6 SRBs, that's the beast that's optimized for LEO missions like Amazon's Constellation. Kuiper needs to get their satellites into orbit quickly, and ULA has 38 flights for the Constellation. A multi-billion-dollar deal that's keeping them alive. Kuiper has to do it by the 30th. By July 2026, they have to have launched 50% of their entire constellation into space to avoid losing their FCC license. That means they have to launch a total of 1% in the next 9 months until then. So far, with the first 6 operational launches, they have launched 153 satellites. So they need to launch just under 163 satellites per month on average. Write in the comments if you think that's possible. I'm curious what you'll say. 2026 is going to be packed. USSF-57, USSF-43, WGS-11 more, Kuiper's DR satellites for more Bissell tracking, and finally, Dream Chaser Tenacity in the 4th quarter on VC4L. We've also been waiting impatiently for the first Dream Chaser mission for years. This has been delayed because Sierra Space is lagging behind in the development of the spacecraft. But it could be a game changer for ISS resupply. And before anyone shouts that the ISS will be decommissioned in 2030, yes, that's true, but by then a number of other stations will have gone into operation, all of which will need to be supplied. Overall, Vulcan could have completed 20 or more missions by the end of 2026, inklusive NRO-Nutzlasten. But what are the risks? An obvious risk for Vulcan is the newly operational New Glenn and of course Starship. Both will be certified for NSSL missions and will undercut the prices it offers. In any case, ULA is aiming for 2 launches per month. Ambitious but doable if they lower the costs. Currently, they haven't quite reached that cadence yet. You're probably wondering now why the US authorities continue to contract ULA when there's a cheaper alternative. Excellent question. That goes back to the expensive lesson they've had to learn the hard way over the past 30 years. It's about wanting to avoid a situation where one player gains a monopoly, which would have catastrophic consequences. Vulcan Centaur, with 3 successful flights, 30 BE-4 engines, and 9 NSSL deals, has shown that ULA remains in the race for now, even though they're more expensive than SpaceX and face hurdles like the SRB accident. With Kuiper and Dream Chaser on the horizon, 2026 could be their year. What do you think about Vulcan's potential? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this Vulcan update, subscribe to Mars Chronicles and leave a thumbs up. A huge thanks goes out to all channel members and Patreon supporters. If you also want early access to our videos, you can find all the details in the video description below. My name is Sirwan, and this was Mars Chronicles. Thanks for tuning in. Per aspera ad astra.